In the centuries we are covering, the ideas people had about their place in history, even among the elite, was severely limited in ways we can hardly conceive today. Even a rudimentary education gives us a grasp of spatial time.
If we add to modern elementary education television, whether through drama, documentary or news, if we add books, magazines, newspapers, and if we add the World Wide Web, we seem to know a lot about other people and other places. We all have some knowledge of history, science, religion, a sense of the past, present and future, whether it is the Nazis, global warming or religion, however crumpled, inadequate and prejudiced our knowledge and perceptions are. Many of us see ourselves as modern and as belonging to a world community. Sadly, almost nothing is known of the ordinary people in the Anglo-Saxon age, or in any age until recently. Anthropologists will correct me, I'm sure, but the closest we are able to get to the early medieval mind sense of time and space might now only be found among the Bushmen of the Kalahari or the tribesmen in what is still inaccessible of the Borneo jungle. I do not believe that I have read a better explanation of our ancestors' expectations 1,000 years ago than in an essay by David Lowenthal in Manifestations for History.
Memorable events marked past epochs, but private and public affairs for the most part seemed driven by immutable forces and desires. The imagined future mirrored the past. For the Christianized West, time began with the creation a few millennia back. Time would end with the Second Coming and Judgment Day. Most thought that momentous day to be no further in the future than the creation in the past. The terrestrial secular span elicited little curiosity about times past, and it evoked little speculation about the future. Few expected earthly progress or improvement. Hopes and fears, prayers, and often bequests addressed not this world, but that to come.
Even if you can get your head around that, like me, you may feel utterly perplexed, because we simply cannot disentangle our own experience of the knowledge we have gained in our short lives and what we think we know now, and really get into our ancestors' minds all those years ago. We invariably begin by thinking of other people, whether alive or dead, by reference to ourselves, our own experiences, which the 17th century philosopher René Descartes realized was usually wrong. One of the aims of history is to try to disentangle ourselves from what we think we know, and then make a stab at what people might have known or thought 1,000 years ago. We can accept David Lowenthal's synthesis or not, because it is just his view of the way human beings thought of their place then. What we mustn't do is to read history backwards. I said that we had a long trek ahead of us before we reached the Norman conquest, and we shall start therefore with a much earlier conquest of the southern shores of the island of Britain. Who were these Anglo-Saxons, this English race, if we can call them that, who by the 11th century had built an effective monarchical government, whose writ, by contemporary lights, ran to all corners of the kingdom? The ethnic terms Angles and Saxons, later grouped as Anglo-Saxons, tend to be used for the period roughly from the fall of the Roman Empire in the west in the 5th century to the invasion of England by William the Conqueror in 1066. The term the English was known during the Anglo-Saxon period and first used by Bede in the title of his history of the English Church in the 8th century. He is the first to have written the word England and may have been the first to use it, or it may already have entered common spoken usage. English is derived from Angle and England from Angeln in modern Holstein, which was part of Denmark 1400 years ago. Some viewers will have heard of Hengest and Horsa, two brothers who came to Kent in the 5th century and started a colony, said to be the beginning of the Germanic invasion of England. This movement or wanderings of people sometimes attracts the German word Volkswanderung. First, we must sadly dispense with one heroic figure as an historical figure. He is the British King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. He first appeared by name in the Chronicle of Nennius in the early 9th century. This author has Arthur fighting 12 battles against the Anglo-Saxons in the late 5th century, the most significant being at Mons Badonicus, whose location is unknown. Mons Badonicus, apparently a battle fought in about 500, is mentioned in the 6th century chronicle of St. Gildas, a Briton living in Wales, but Arthur does not feature in his text. The legend of Arthur gained its momentum from Geoffrey of Monmouth, Bishop of St. Asaph in Wales, whose history of the kings of Britain was written in the 1130s, 600 years after Arthur is said to have lived. In this, Arthur is fighting in France for the Romans, where he's gained a glorious victory. Geoffrey has him dying at home in battle against his treacherous nephew Mordred. Camelot and his kingdom collapse. It is Geoffrey's exciting writing style and his imagination by which the romance gained European attention. The French added the story of Sir Lancelot's adulterous relationship with Queen Guinevere and the quest for the Holy Grail, the cup used by Christ at the Last Supper. The story of Merlin and of Arthur's withdrawing the magic sword Excalibur from the stone in the lake, a feat at which all previous men had failed, proved that he was the true king. This appeared in a 13th century French poem by Robert de Boron. It has been suggested that the stories of the Knights of the Round Table inspired King Edward III to found the Order of the Garter in the following century, while the late 15th century saw the publication of Le Morte d'Arthur, which, despite its title, is in English by Thomas Malory. Modern-day Winchester claims, not too seriously, to have the top of the Round Table on display in its medieval hall. The romantic ruins of Tintagel Castle, Cornwall, are claimed to be the site of the legendary Camelot and continue to attract visitors. A pseudo-history and film about the Holy Grail have very recently broken box office records and been a bestseller. One wonders what Joseph of Arimathea, to whom by tradition the Grail was given by Jesus, would make of it all. There may have been a Briton in the 5th, early 6th centuries, a war leader, it has been speculated by R.G. Collingwood, or a mercenary, trained in the Roman use of heavy cavalry, who fought off Saxon inroads into southwest England, or Angle inroads into north and east. And that's the point. Was he a Briton from the West Country, from Wales, from lowland Scotland? For there are numerous places which may have been named after him, like Arthur's Stones, Arthur's Round Tables, Arthur's Chairs and Seats. There were probably other martial men in Britain, known as feudaries, who'd been hired and trained by the Romans. Some may have seen an opportunity to profit by offering protection to wealthy Romano Britons. In northern France, known as Neustria, there was some kind of rearguard Roman general, or emperor, known as Syagrius. His imperium had disappeared without trace by the later years of the 5th century. We hear of him from the important Frankish chronicle of St. Gregory of Tours, France, who would have been a contemporary. Syagrius would have had commanders, some attracted by pay or booty from foreign places such as Britain. Possibly the Arthurian legends spring from one of these who returned to British shores. But to return to our two invaders, Hengest and Horsa. They may also have been legendary, except that they appear clearly as the first to arrive from North Germany in a history and became the harbingers of the Anglo-Saxons. They were apparently invited by Vortigern, King of Britain, to help him to fend off the Picts, who lived in eastern Scotland. But 6 years later, the brothers had turned against their employer and Hengist seized the kingdom. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records these matters.
433 AD. Here the Britons sent to Rome and asked them for help against the Picts, but they had none there because they were campaigning against Attila, king of the Huns, and then they sent to the Angles and made the same request to the princes of the Angle race. 449 AD. Here Marcianus and Valentinian succeeded to the kingdom of Rome and ruled 7 years. And in their days Hengest and Horsa, invited by Vortigern, king of the Britons, sought out Britain in the landing place which is named Ebba's Creek, at first to help the Britons, but later they fought against them. The king ordered them to fight against the Picts, and they did so and had victory wheresoever they came. They then sent to Angeln and ordered them to send more help, and to tell them of the worthlessness of the Britons and the excellence of the land. They then sent them more help. These men came from 3 tribes of Germany, from the Old Saxons, from the Angles, from the Jutes. From the Jutes came Cantware and the Whitware. That is the tribe that now lives on the Isle of Wight, and that race is Wessex, which they still call the race of Jutes. From the Old Saxons came the East Saxons and South Saxons and West Saxons. From Angeln, which has stood waste ever since between the Jutes and the Saxons, came the East Angles, Middle Angles, Mercians, and all the Northumbrians. 455 AD. Here Hengest and Horsa fought against Vortigern the king in a place which is called Aylesford, and his brother Horsa was killed. And after that Hengest and Esk his son succeeded to the kingdom that had been Vortigern's.
This information has been taken from Bede, who was compiling his history almost 2 centuries later. Bede may have had access to manuscripts long since lost, and may also have been heir to an oral tradition which flourished in Scandinavia for centuries, as we shall see. The French historian Marc Bloch, in the first volume of his Feudal Society, is most useful on the value of oral tradition in history. Hengist is also a warrior's name in the epic poem Beowulf, written in English sometime between 680 and 800. Could the unknown author of Beowulf be referring to a real person who was indeed called in as an ally by Vortigern?
In the next episode we shall investigate what we mean in these formative years by kings and kingdoms.